In this video, I'll explain the different types of piano accompaniment that are usual for the classical era. Remember, the classical era is roughly from 1750 to 1820, the time of Mozart, Beethoven, Haydn, and a few other cats, but those are the big dogs at the time. So I've used this well-known melody, and I've started out with just a basic block chords. Block chords weren't very popular at the time, but they show you that this is where the chords change. And if I just use block chords, and you can see down on the piano which notes are playing, block chords are when they're played all at once. So here's what the basic melody sounds like. So that's the idea. That's what chords are happening underneath this melody. Now there are three different types of very standard common accompaniment styles, and this is the first one. I've got the same melodic idea, but I'm going to play what's called Alberti bass. Alberti bass is basically quavers, and it takes those same chords, but it breaks them up in a particular kind of way. So I'll play it for you. Same chords, so the Alberti bass, I've taken the same harmony. This is a C chord, and I've just broken up that C chord to go from the root to the fifth and the third and back to the fifth, and it sounds like this. And that's how the original of that tune was written. That's called the Alberti bass. Another kind of bass is the arpeggiated bass. Arpeggiated is a big fancy word, but essentially it just means to break up those chords in order. So instead of going from the root to the fifth to the third, I'm going to go in order. So the arpeggiated bass, very similar to the Alberti bass. This is a very classical thing. The Alberti bass is probably your first go-to if you want something to sound classical. Didn't really exist so much popularly outside the classical era. And here's the broken chord or arpeggiated bass. So it's very similar, but it doesn't quite have the same classical feeling as the Alberti bass is. The last one is the sort of very special to Mozart one, and it's called the alla Mozart, in the style of Mozart. And what this one does is it plays the bass note, again we're talking quavers here, plays the bass note, and then it repeats the third and the fifth, but they're played together. So the result that you get is something that sounds very recognizable as classical and maybe even very Mozart. So those are the three basic accompaniment styles that classical composers would write. They wouldn't just write this for piano or keyboard instruments. They might write this in their string parts or other accompaniment. But I started with just block chords to show you what the chords are, which chords are being used, and then I broke those chords up in various different ways. Root, fifth, and third for the Alberti bass, root, third, and fifth, so in order, backing up and down for the arpeggiated bass, and then alla Mozart, I start with the root of the chord, and then I use these together. It doesn't always have to be the root of the chord. This is a G chord, but that's not a G. It's mainly just a bass note, and then the other two notes of the chord, and that's what makes alla Mozart.